If you're someone that's in the vicious cycle of being overweight and having lower back pain, and you want to exercise to lose the weight to help the lower back pain, but when you exercise, your lower back pain gets worse, and then they all end up kind of perpetuating one another, then this case study of a patient that I saw is going to be really useful for you. So my name's Luke, I'm an osteopath at Body Zest, and we see patients all the time with lower back pain, but this particular person was quite interesting. She came in and she'd been told by a specialist that she had a disc issue, a historic disc herniation, and some signs of degenerative changes. And she didn't remember the exact quote, but something along the lines of, this is just something you're going to have to live with, or this is something you're always going to have. She basically took that as, I'm always going to have lower back pain. This is just a problem that isn't going anywhere, and I'm just going to have to live with it. So she ignored it and ignored it and ignored it until it got really bad. And then eventually she thought, I'm just going to at least see if someone and a second opinion can help. So this patient, who we're going to call Kay, when Kay came to see us, it was really interesting because when I assessed the lower back, yeah, there was a little bit of a sign of this lower back not maybe moving as well as it could, but the more noticeable elements of the problem or the picture were her hips and her mid-back. Her hips were really stiff, the muscles around them were really tight, and then her posture was quite forward and her mid-back was very, very stiff with it. The lower back was then in the middle between the mid-back and the hips. The lower back was sitting, having to take all of that slack. If you imagine, as osteopaths, the way we look at it is that if a joint isn't moving, you're still going to get from A to B, you're still going to get by and move in some way. So a different area is going to compensate. And that's exactly what was happening to Kay and her lower back. So when I explained to her that despite the x-ray saying that there was a historic disc herniation, and despite the x-ray saying that there was some degenerative changes, which is osteoarthritis, but really we just consider that wear and tear and a normal aging process in the spine. When I explained to her that these things actually, if you took them away, her back pain could be exactly the same, it was like she didn't believe me because she was so convinced that it was those two diagnostic features of the x-ray that it couldn't possibly be anything else. But truly, we will see patients all the time that have no degenerative changes in the back, or at least this normal range, and no old disc herniation, or at least just, nothing that's flared up. And they'd have the same amount of pain that she did if they had a compensatory issue in the lower back for these two other areas that weren't working very well. So the way that we approached treatment was to, do a little bit of work into the lower back just to encourage some more movement and to calm it down slightly because it was flared up and quite angry, but doing it in conjunction with getting the mid-back moving, getting the hips moving, and getting the pelvic musculature way, way looser. What this did was it created a window of opportunity. It didn't happen overnight, it wasn't a quick fix, this one, but what we started to see within a few appointments was that the back pain had just reduced slightly. And in that slight reduction, we then said, let's start to implement a little bit more exercise. So she started to just do some walking, do some gentle stuff that I gave her to do around the house, and actually she realized that she was fine to do it. So within that window of opportunity, we've reduced the pain slightly. We haven't changed much about what's really causing it, but we've created a mindset shift in that time. This patient now believes that she's capable to start doing a bit of exercise. What that means is then she starts to consider that she's got a bit of autonomy over her health. When people think they've got autonomy over their health, they actually start making smarter decisions about their health all round. So she starts thinking, okay, well, maybe I can lose a bit of weight, which then leads her to think, okay, well, maybe I'll consider what I'm eating. So she starts to eat better. She starts to exercise a little bit more as the treatment program continues, which takes a little bit longer, this part, but the hips then start to move better than they did. And the mid-back starts to move better than it did, which offloads the lower back. So within, after a few appointments, a short-term change, after a few weeks, and certainly after 6 weeks that she came in, all of a sudden we've got a person who's moving better through their whole spine, moving better through their hips, eating better, doing more exercise, and she got a really, really good outcome. If her expectation was that outcome just from the treatment I did, we wouldn't have got anywhere. And if her expectation was that she could do it without having to do anything herself, exercise-wise, we wouldn't have got anywhere. But it's a great story because this particular patient just used that little window of opportunity to just get up, start doing a little bit more, take a bit of responsibility for her part to play in the recovery, and the outcome she got was as good as we'd get with anyone. Now, it's not a resolution. It doesn't matter to me that there's a little bit of degenerative changes in disc. It doesn't matter to me that there's a sign of an old disc herniation. What matters to me is why the body wasn't coping with those pretty much normal features. So to prevent it happening in the future, it's how do we stop the lower back having to do the work of 3 areas. So exercises for the mid back to keep it mobile, exercises for the hips and stretches for the pelvic muscles to keep them loose, and then strengthening exercises for the lower back to build more stability around that historic disc issue to stabilize it. And that is how you prevent something like this reoccurring. Obviously in line with the person managing weight, staying more active and staying more mobile. So I hope that helps. If you're someone that's struggling with something like this, follow us for more videos just like this about patients that get amazing results.